Hi, everyone. Welcome to Stories That Shape Us. I'm Joanna Danielle. As I shared yesterday, this week, I am interviewing, talking with contributors of our 365 days devotional, Come See a Man. And we're launching that devotional April 8 and 9 at our annual Emotional Healing Conference. This year, it's going to be in Swansea, South Wales, April 8 and 9. The link that you can register for the conference will be below this video. But today I'm speaking to a really special guest. I've talked to her many times. It's my baby sister. She don't look like baby, but she's my sister. She's a missionary and has amazing, amazing stories. But today we're going to talk about one of those stories that shape her and the man that she's inviting you to see, just help you understand her journey just a little bit. So stay tuned and please stay with us as we and enjoy this talk with me.
Okay.
Welcome, Tam, to Stories That Shape Us. You want to tell the people anything
Yeah.
about you, about your ministry, and before we start talking?
Okay. My name is Tamar Lawrence, and I have what I consider a very unique ministry. 10 years ago, my husband and I stepped out and we became missionaries, and we were going to be missionaries for a year, but it's been 10 years. But
Mm,
halfway through that, the Lord gave us some children, well, one child, which has now translated into three children and many more who call us mom and dad that we, support emotionally, sometimes financially. So our mission right now is raising these three native girls from the Amazon jungle for God. And of course, it's a daily struggle, but God has been on our side. And
mm.
we're very honored to be asked to do this ministry.
So tell us about that journey and the stories that you write in Come See a Man, the stories that shaped not the stories that led you to go to mission. I remember some of the stories before we even go into that story. Whenever I think about missionary, I don't think we just I don't know if we had a choice. We had to because you remember those stories that our father used to tell us as we have worship and on a Friday evening,
Mm-hmm.
especially
Mm-hmm.
those amazing stories.
Yes.
And though at that time I didn't make up my mind to be a missionary or even serve in the way that I'm serving, but every time I say
Yeah.
missionary, those are the stories that come to my mind. So, did those stories have anything to
Uh,
do with your decision?
no. Honestly, I know I remember growing up and hearing of um the Philippines. For some
Yeah,
reason, that for me, that's where mission was. The
yeah.
Philippines. And I remember hearing a story about the school there, but I think I was just too young. And
Mm,
from 12, I just wanted to be a journalist, and that was it. Nothing else mattered. Even though I was the counselor among all my friends, the one who had all the relationship advice, so I knew nothing about relationship. I would just give their magazines and books and tell them what I find in there and stuff. But all I wanted to be was a journalist. But in my final year of university, um, I read a book, from David Gates, and mission just really got me. And from then, like, I wanted to be a missionary for a little bit. And, I wanted to see how I could merge mission and being a journalist because it's what I wanted since I was 12. And here am I, 20 something. I'm not going to give up on that now. And I'm being trained to, work for the BBC. My lecturers were saying you're going to go be a correspondent since you want to be in South America so badly. You're going to be a correspondent for the BBC. And they were really pushing and training me for that. So they were quite disappointed when I said, oh, I'm going to go to South America, but it's not to be a correspondent. I'm going to go be a missionary. But of course, it didn't quite work out that way. But, personally, I wanted to be this single woman who would travel the world as a missionary. I
mm.
wanted to be single because I thought, for one, having a husband, which husband is going to say, oh, yeah, let's go? No, they're not going to want that. They're going to want the house and the kids. And by that time, I knew at 19 that I didn't I didn't necessarily want to give birth to children. You know, at 17, I started praying for the Lord to help me to find kids that I hear about being left in bathrooms or left on the side of the streets or something. So at 17, I started praying for God to find me children that could be mine. And at 19, I was like, I don't want to give birth to kids. It just sounds like this crazy experience that I'm not sure I want to be a part of. And you don't have to give birth to be a mom, you know? So I've always loved children with all my heart, always did, and always wanted, of all different races, I used to say. But here am I at, my mid 20s, and I'm to graduate from university, and I wanted to go be a missionary for a little bit, but God frustrated that and it didn't happen. And then I met Richard, who's now my husband, and he just seemed, this really fired up guy, and mission was important to him too. So I was like, okay, God, I'm open. I know I'll say things, but I've always been open to if that's what God wants, then I'll do it. So he asked me to marry him after like 6 months,
Mm.
and it's like, okay, God, if that's what you want, that's what I'm gonna do. But I'm
Yeah.
asking you to not make this happen if I'm gonna get hurt at all. I don't do pain, God.
Hmm.
Hence, I don't want to give birth to children. I don't do pain. Um, so he came to Jamaica. We got married, and the first year was crazy. It was wonderful. We were really good friends because at first I was in the UK, then I was in Jamaica, and in that time we were on the phone constantly. So we really developed this friendship and learned to tell each other, everything and share our day and just, really bonded and connected. So when he was there, we still had that, but we were such different people. And he was not converted, neither was I.
Mm.
It's the other day I sat down and I thought it through and I was like, wow, I was not really nice in the first year of my marriage as I thought of some things I did and said. And I remember watching Tyler Perry's movie, Why Did I Get Married? Constantly and kept asking myself that. And I'm like, that must have made my husband feel so bad. I keep saying, why did I get married? And all of a sudden, I had a problem with the fact that I'm 3 years older than him. But I would count it at 5 years for some reason. It was just anything to make him feel like I made a mistake in marrying, in getting
That that
married. That's not
first
what I
year,
wanted anyway.
that first year of marriage is they say the first year of marriage is challenging. And
Yeah,
you experience some of those challenges in the first year
a
because
lot.
you spent a lot of your dating apart. You're from different family context. You're from different
Yes.
cultures, even though you're two black people, but the context rather and the culture was different. The home was different. And some of these things we
Yeah.
don't think about when we're sometimes when we're getting married,
No.
we don't have these conversations. On a
Yeah.
Saturday, somebody was asking me about how Glenn and I met, and I was saying they got married young in their early 20s, and I said I don't think I was ready for marriage in my 20s. Because the woman I am now, when I look back, I
Mm-hmm.
knew that I wasn't ready anyway. I didn't want to get married at that stage in my life. But when I look back, I knew that I wasn't mature enough for marriage. I wanted to live my life. I wanted to do my thing, and marriage would have been inconvenient for me. And so that was good
Yeah.
for me to know, and didn't do it then. But you got married, and you said the first year
I
was
didn't know.
you didn't know. We don't know what we don't know, do we?
No, we don't know what we don't know. I thought I was ready. I read so many books. You
Uh-huh.
guys would bring home books, and I read so many books, and I developed this genre in my head and this whole scenario and the
Hollywood.
love
Hollywood.
on this Hollywood and this love unconditionally, regardless of who I was. Oh, he was just gonna fall at my feet. Everything was gonna be amazing because for me, I kept myself in all these ways that everything is gonna just fall into place. I did not realize the selfishness I was building up. I was selfish and I did
or
not
the
know it.
ideal,
You
the
know,
ideal,
the
the
ideal,
idea
the ideal, yes,
that you build up in your
yes,
mind about what relationship should
yeah,
be. Yeah.
should be, yes. Because this is my husband. My husband right now works 4 jobs, and I
Mm.
appreciate it so much. Then just him having one job that would take him into town a couple of days had me thinking, oh, he must not love me. Why he wants to be gone from me for 2 days, and and the job wanted to send him abroad, and absolutely, and he would do all those things for me. He stopped working in town, and he ended up losing his job, you know, and it was because of me. And I never really thought of that until who I am. I'm like, you know what? I should have been married now instead of then, you know?
Yeah, so
But
but
while
you
I'm a woman,
guys you grew together through
yes,
that. It's not
yes,
easy to grow through seasons like that
no,
where you're navigating so many things. You're learning things about yourself and you're
yeah,
learning things about him and he's learning about you and you're learning about him and you're trying to figure out
yeah,
you're trying to figure out how that fit. And you did a lot of that in the jungle in Guyana, away from us. I'm in the UK.
yeah,
We can't see it. We can't support. We're well, I was away, not being able to see how, because by
mm-hmm,
then I was married a few years, gained some
mm-hmm.
experience, but we were far away. So how did you guys navigate your way out of that to where you are now?
You know what? And that's how in that first year when it was tough, I held on because I said, God, I asked you if I should be married. I told you, don't bring this man to my country if I'm not to be married. And you brought him here, so there must be a reason. And I held on for that reason, and he held on for that reason because God must have brought us together for a reason. And God did. And God knew what he wanted to do. So God picked us up and dropped us in the bush
Mm.
because the bush was what we needed, you know? And I remember a missionary saying God brought him from corporate America and dropped him in the jungle to save him. And I always liked that term, but oh, believe me, God did the same thing for us. After 5 years, we sat down right there, by the river, this huge, river, and we knew that God brought us there to save our marriage and to save us. And
Mm.
we knew a year later why God did that. Because God had some little girls from this
That
jungle that
needed
he
you.
needed to save.
Yeah.
And God, he brought us together because there's nowhere that, oh, Rich, oh, there's mission here, or him saying, Tam, there's mission here, that either one of us kicked and screamed. Argentina was the only place I kicked and screamed, and it's because I wanted the money to go to Jamaica.
But can
But
I
there's
interject
nowhere,
time? Because I think it's
yeah,
really important to add here for our listeners and people who follow Stories That Shape
yeah,
Us. A lot of women are in abusive marriages, and I want to talk about the difference between a difficult marriage and an abusive one. And
absolutely.
I
Yes,
did I
it's
did a
different.
series on an abusive marriage, and I did two on is my marriage difficult or is it abusive? And I will
Yes,
put that below this video because I think it's a really important distinction. Now,
yes,
Tammy said that God brought her and Richard to the jungles to help with the challenges that they were having in their marriage, the selfishness
yeah,
that she needed to get over. I can testify that Richard's a really humble guy because I'm his sister-in-law, right? So he lived in my house. The conversations that we have and how we speak, and I know how he listens and what I
yeah,
see. So if I want you to hear the distinction between an abusive marriage and a difficult one. A
yeah,
difficult marriage, we can apply ourselves, God help us, we work through it, we get support, we apply, we do the
absolutely.
things. But an abusive marriage is very, very different. So if you're in an abusive
Yeah,
marriage, I will really recommend that you get support for yourself.
absolutely.
And it's not the same thing as a difficult marriage. They had a difficult first year and they work through it and mature. And as they mature, their
Yeah,
marriage mature and change with them. It's very difficult when you're being
absolutely.
manipulated, when you're being controlled, when you're being hit, when you've been financially abused, when you've been sexually abused. It's a very different thing then. Yeah, Karen, tell me.
Yes, oh, thank you so much for bringing that. It's absolutely different. Abusive Richard never was.
No.
Um, And, of course, the difficulty did not where, oh, it's that first year, it was over. It took us a good 5 years. Good 5 years. This year we've been married 13 years. Um, but it took 5 years of a lot more. But it's like 5 years came and I don't know, things clicked for both of us. For both of us. And I remember sitting down one night and having a conversation with God. And I said, you know what, tomorrow I'm gonna get up and I'm gonna be different. And if that difference means I need to walk out on this difficulty, even though I have this little girl, I had just one at the time, I will, and I'll take her and I'm gone. And I don't know if it's some Esau Jacob kind of situation, because I can't even remember if I said it to Richard, but I know he got up that morning and it's like he wanted to outdo me because he was different. And since then, it's where we're trying to outdo each other in being the good one who loved the other one more than. And it's been like that since. And who we are now, a couple of weeks ago, we sat up one night until about 2 o'clock and we were just talking, just being so open and vulnerable. And we're like, man, should we have been married now instead of then? But we know that who we are now is because of all that we went through then. And we're so grateful and right there. And it's like we recommitted that all we needed was a pastor, but we're so grateful. We're so grateful as a pastor. Who we are.
But here you are now parenting. You're now parenting 3 children. So now you're not just married and it's just you two trying to work through some of the things that we have to work through when we get married. I believe marriage can be character building when we allow it, because we're learning so much about ourselves that we didn't know. But I think parenting is another level of knowing about self, things that we didn't know, because and you're parenting traumatized children, you're parenting children who is not used to love and affection and care and nurturing, and you're doing all of those things that I know because of the work that I do, that sometimes that can be rejected, but it's needed, because when you have your core wound is abandonment, it's a challenge. So really quickly, tell us how some of the stories that shape you, that help you to be able to parent in that way.
That helped me to parent in that way. You know what? My ministry is called Marriage Ministry Motherhood, because in having to navigate my marriage and see God in there, and then the Lord dropping us in the jungle, and we became ministers, if you put it that way. And I had to now have this entire school of 50 traumatized young people who the school starts at 8 and they'll be there at 7, and they would stay as long as they could, having to love them and show them something that I know once they step through that gate, they're not getting. I started learning how to give of myself in such a different way. And one missionary said, remember the Lord said, Enoch said, that the Bible said anyway, that Enoch had his son. And once Enoch had his son, Enoch walked with God, and he walked with God in such a way that God took him.
Yeah.
It's like, that's what happened. The Lord gave us this little girl. And in having to learn how to parent, God started parenting us. And we started seeing the gaps and holes in in what we did not get. And God started parenting us, and we started walking with God in such a different way. So, learning about Enoch and what he did, learning of Moses and the patience he needed to lead these, million strong, stiff-necked people to the promised land. These Bible stories that we had to come and see in such different ways than what we heard when we were growing up as kids. we started having to really use and apply and spend time with God to get Him to parent us so we can step out this door and parent these girls or in the living room or in their bed waiting for us to raise them for heaven. So the
mm,
Bible and the Bible stories just started coming alive to us so that we can be God to these kids as they read us, because they can't necessarily read and understand the Bible. One, because they probably
mm,
just can't read, or two, because
mm,
of the pain behind it
mm,
all. So
mm.
we then had to be the Bible and do like Paul said, follow me as I follow Christ.
Thank you so much, Tam. I love talking to Tammy about Tamara, about missions and just what it is. Tam and Richard wrote a book. What's the book called, Tam?
Take no thought.
Take No
Take
Thought,
no
and you
thought.
can get that on Amazon. Take No Thought, wherever you are, you can get that on Amazon. And you can follow Tammy on marriage, ministry, and motherhood on Instagram and on Facebook, where she shows and share their journey of parenting these beautiful girls and just what God is doing in their lives. And you can get Come See a Man if you register for in-person, early bird, in-person part of the conference. You will get a copy of Come See a Man and be able to read Tammy's amazing stories of parenting. I see it in action, but I still listen to the stories at the edge of my seat because they sound so amazing to me. You know, she went for 1 year and she's still on missions. You know, she went for 1 year and she's still there. I keep saying that because I'm like, I felt like we
10 years
lost
later.
you when you went. Um, but register
Yeah.
for the conference to get a copy of the devotional so you can read her stories and you can take no thoughts so you can also learn some more about her and follow her on social media and see their journey of parenting the girls. And Tam shares some of her journey as well in terms of marriage and some of these challenges that they overcome.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. I know you're going to school. You're going to go teach. Tammy's still in Guyana, and I know she's going to go teach this morning. So thank you for
Yeah.
joining us, Tam. And take care, everyone. Thank you so much.